Hi, my name is Melissa Hooper, and I'm the assistant principal oboist of the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. I did my undergraduate degree at the Juilliard School, and I did part of a master's degree at the University of Texas at Austin, and I discontinued that degree actually because I was getting a lot of freelance work subbing with different orchestras like the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra and the National Symphony, and actually the BSO as well. I also have played with the Hawaii Symphony, the San Antonio Symphony, and in the past year, I've gotten to sub with the New York Philharmonic also, and the Detroit Symphony. And the National Symphony again. Been doing a lot of traveling in the last year, not anymore, but it's really wonderful to get to play with all these different orchestras and meet fabulous new colleagues and playing exciting new halls all over the place too. It's interesting to see how each different orchestra is its own completely unique organism. They all function so differently as in relation to even where they play with the conductor's beat and how people adjust to the hall, and it's just you learn so much playing with different people like that. I was 12 years old, and I'm from a family that's not musical in the slightest, big football family actually. And I was in band. I joined band and started playing the flute. And I played the flute for a few months, and we were given the opportunity to switch to the oboe or bassoon if we chose. And I had no idea what an oboe was. Had never heard it before. I was told it would be a challenge, and I was always up for a challenge, and I'm glad I switched. I was immediately drawn to the world of classical music. I, I came to it just knowing absolutely nothing at all. And I remember going to my first orchestra concert and just being blown away. And, the oboe was my foot in the door to that. So I took it and ran with it. But the oboe itself it's such a unique instrument because it is intensely difficult and there's so much that goes into playing it outside of just practicing. But I love the sound of the oboe and the huge world of color and variety that we're able to get with it. To me, it feels in a lot of ways very similar to the human voice, especially how we can sustain through a phrase, and um, it just feels very much like the sound of the oboe comes from within. So the range of the oboe is actually not that large. It's one of the smaller ranges of any instrument of the orchestra. Our lowest note is a low B flat. And there's nothing you can do to get lower than that. High notes, you can make up fingerings and go into the stratosphere, but the most commonly written note you'll see is a high F, which flutes go on for octaves above this, but so that's pretty much all you'll see in orchestral music is in terms of the range. Part of my challenge, my job as an interpreter is to do as much as I can with that smaller set of notes that I work with. And really there's a tremendous amount you can do in that small range. So the reed itself, the opening is extremely small. It's if you imagine a drinking straw folded in half, squashed down, it's even smaller than that. So it really actually can't take that much air through it. So in order to not control things at the reed with our lips, we have to hold back pressure within our own body to kind of filter that. Um, So there's a lot going on in the mouth, in the throat at all times. It's I don't think it's dissimilar to what other instruments do, even a singer. There's a lot of movement of the back of the tongue in order to get the air going as it should. But the real challenge is that the reeds don't last very long. Especially when you're doing heavy orchestral playing, a reed might last, you know, a rehearsal or two, it may be 5 to 10 hours of heavy playing at most. It is, and I do enjoy the crafting part of it. I'm kind of a crafty person, so that drew me in a bit initially too. I'm always making new reeds, and I can make them specifically for the piece that I'm playing as well. Like a reed that I would make to play a Mozart symphony would be very different than one that I would play in a Mahler symphony. So I can add some of the features that I want in my sound into the reed itself, and that gives me more opportunities to transform my sound as well. There are a series of tests that I try to stick to so I can stay honest with myself while I'm making a read. So I want it to peep a certain pitch level because unlike other instruments, actually almost every other instrument, the oboe doesn't have a tuning slide. There's nothing we can do to change the pitch of this. And that's why the oboe gives the A to tune the orchestra as well. So the pitch is really mostly built into the reed itself. So we don't have to constantly be controlling it with our lips, which would be extremely tiring. I do. I play both of them. Not so often in my job, really, but occasionally there will be a Mahler symphony where I'm doubling on oboe and English horn at various times. And the oboe d'amore comes up in Bach a lot, and also different pieces randomly scattered through the 20th century repertoire. The English horn is quite a bit bigger than the oboe, and it has a deeper sound. It's very mournful sounding and is usually playing the sad melodies. And oboe d'amore is in between the two in size, and it has kind of an interesting tone. It's hard to describe exactly what it sounds like, but it's very distinctive. We really can't change our pitch level. So other instruments can, pull things in, push things out, turn different things to adjust their pitch. This is it. We're stuck. There's nothing.
Uh-huh.
So that's my job as an oboist is to make sure that my instrument is in working order and will sound exactly the correct pitch. And a lot of that is to do with making of the reed. Um, but that's why is because we're pretty much stuck there. Oh, there's so many great ones. We have so many opportunities in every piece. I can't think of many pieces that don't have great oboe solos. The one that comes to mind right now is Das Lied von der Erde by Mahler. There are two movements that just have the most heartbreakingly tragic oboe solos I've ever heard. And it's really gratifying to get to play those and to really dig into that intense sadness that's written into that. Um, there's so many. We played Pulcinella by Stravinsky this past season, and that is full of great oboe moments as well. The Serenata from Pulcinella is one of the best of all time, and it uses a larger part of the oboe range than many other solos do. So it's challenging to make sure that you have 3 octaves of C's that line up perfectly in pitch and that all your low notes speak. And the funeral march is one of the most beautiful things I think ever written. It's so tragic and so profound, and it really it's just as dark as you can get in classical music. I think it's especially compared to Beethoven's earlier works. This is on another level for me, and it's it's one of those solos that when you play the opening solo of the second movement, you feel emotionally exhausted by the end of it if it's going as it should. it feels like you've been on an emotional journey. Um, and the thing about that, aside from the intense sadness of that movement, is it has a feeling of continuity throughout and a bit of reflection on, maybe this is projecting, but on a life. It's projecting on someone who has passed, and there are glimpses of hope in that movement and glimpses of, moments of remembrance that are beautiful and even more striking compared to the darkness of the whole thing.